you know, we had the friends that we would meet and jump on a bus or whatever. But even then, what was neat about that, and of course that was dating and all, so nobody ever, the grass was always greener in the other town. So the boys from South River would date girls in Sayreville, and boys from Sayreville would date girls from South River. The only girl I ever dated from Sayreville was my wife. I think I'll tell you that story and embarrass her. Yeah, but this is the true story, and this won't take long. Now I got out of the Marine Corps. I'm 21 years old, after 4 years being in the Marine Corps, and I was going to make it a career, but then my mother said, well, why don't you wait just a month, because you never wrote home and all this other stuff, and I said, but there's nothing for me here, you know. Well, why don't you stay? Well, within a week I got hired at DuPont for the most money I ever saw in my life, $2.22 an hour. It was like heaven, right? So then I was doing that for probably about 6 months. Meanwhile, her stepbrother, John, and I were friends from 2nd grade in A Lady of Victory. So now we're going around in his car, doing what we do, and I was 21 and so was he. And all of a sudden on one fall day he says, I'm just going to go in and get a jacket. And I said, well, I'll go in with you. So I walked in his kitchen. They lived by, you know, across from Bucci's over there. And I didn't know it at the time, but she was home on leave from a nursing school, so she's sitting in the next room. So I walked into the kitchen, there was her mom and dad and everybody like that. And I kind of looked in, I seen her sitting there with sweatshirts on, her face in a book. So I walked down and I said, hey, who's that girl sitting in there? He said, well, that's my stepsister. I said, well, what's her name? He said, what the hell do you want to know for her? I said, I'm going to marry her. Now, I didn't know if she was 14 or 40, whether she had any teeth, or, I just, you know. And this is what I told my kids, don't marry until you fall in love. Well, how will we know? You'll not. And at that, marriage was the furthest thing from my head. Are you kidding me? 21 years old, good job. Marriage, are you kidding me? So anyway, so being in her last year of nursing school, they put different, they would go kind of like, they would go like 3 months over in Clone Settering to learn about cancer, care for children. Then we'd go in another location, and like that. So in this part of it, she was going to go to Seton Institute, and that's like a mental hospital for nuns and priests in Baltimore, Maryland. So anyway, so I just met her. So, but here's the point. The first date I took her on, I asked her for a date. Yeah, okay. So I took her to New Brunswick, to the State Theater, and saw Career. That was the name of the movie, Career. And, you know, that was our first date. The next weekend, because she was only home on weekends, the next week she came, and her second date, and I had no money. Now let me explain this. All money still went for board, you know, to give to the family, you know, because you were in a freeloader. And I kept some. I had a car with payments. I hadn't hardly any clothes. I saw my back and a Marine Corps sea bag full of Marine Corps stuff, but you didn't need much. You know, you're single. So the second date, I found out she was a cheerleader in Sayreville, 1957 and stuff like that, so I figured in Sayreville High School was still playing down by the Leprechaun Field. So I said, well, let's go see a high school game. So we went down there and they had a snow fence around the field in those days. So me, being cheap, you know, whatever, so it cost $0.25 to get in, but a booster, we went over the fence, we snuck in. That was our second date. The next weekend, the third date, I didn't have any, I had less money, so I figured, well, we'll go for a walk. So we walked from her house on Main Street, up Pulaski Avenue, down Washington Road, back up to Main Street. So we're going by Sal Greenhouse's Jewelers. And I said, well, let's stop in here. For what? I said, pick out a ring. She said, I don't even know you. I said, I got a lifetime to find out about you. So, okay. Walked into Mr. Greenhouse's, and that is the third date. And he's sitting there eating a tuna fish sandwich with a brown paper bag. And I said, well, here's Mr. Greenhouse, you know, pick out a couple rings, fine. And I told her, pick out anything you want. I got no money anyway. I got to pay it off. What's the difference? If it goes $10 or $1,000, it doesn't matter. So she picked out a very nice engagement ring and a wedding ring. And then I said, okay, Mr. Greenhouse, wrap them up and I'll give you $1 down and I'll pay you off. And in those days, the merchants, Mr. Silver, Mr. Newhouser, Mr. Nobla, all these people, you dealt your word was your bond. You could walk in here, you get $1,000 worth of furniture on a handshake. I mean, you could buy a house on a handshake. There was no contracts or nothing like that. So anyway, and she said, no, I want you to get a ring too. I said, I don't want a ring, you know. He said, no, I'm going to insist, you have to have a ring. So I said, Mr. Green, what's the cheapest ring you got in the store? He said, $8. I said, that's the one I want. And that's the one I bought. So what he did, he ripped off his lunch bag, the brown paper bag. He put on there X dollars for the 3 rings, $1 down, balance due, put it up, tied a rubber band around it, and threw it in the safe. So I went home that night. I told my parents, I said, you get no more money. I'm getting married, and I have to save my money. So that's the way we started out our marriage. People said, it'll never work. It'll never work. And this year, it'll be 50 years. Wow. So. And again, the houses weren't that expensive. You could buy our first house after living in 3 apartments, which I have bad taste with that, because people in those days, see, there wasn't anything like, you know, Winding Woods or Amsterdam apartments. You lived in somebody's house. So my experiences anyway, if you lived in somebody's house, they thought they owned you. You know, and if you were lucky, you got a good one. If not, you know, so I don't like that. But anyway, so we bought our first home on Lower MacArthur Avenue. You know, the inexpensive houses on this side, on the south side. And we bought that house for $13,500. All the money in the world. And instead of 2x4, they had 2x3s. I mean, forget about building codes. You know, actually when it rained, on the original siding, which was like plywood, you could actually see almost the studs. I mean, with just no codes at all. You know, but that's where we started out. And then years later, maybe 13 years, I guess we lived there 11 years or 13 years. Came home one day, she said, don't put down your lunchbox. She said, we're going to go look at a house. And this was the house here.